Hello, friends. How are we doing? Happy Friday if you're watching live. I'm really excited. It's been a great week. Have you seen how well the Walking Dead universe and Maladum, indeed, are doing on Kickstarter? I have. I'm very, very intrigued to see where this is going. So, yeah, I'd love to know what you think of these two projects. They're really exciting to me. Hence, I said I'm excited, obviously. And I think it's going to be a really fun episode. If you haven't seen it already, we had an interview with Matthias Jonsson Harker, who was the game designer for the Walking Dead universe over at Free League. But we'll touch on that in a bit. And as for Maladum, well, Core Space is an amazing science fiction role playing game, um, tabletop game rather, with miniatures and scenery, and it's beautiful. And when I saw Maladum on display at UK Games Expo, I could not wait for this Kickstarter campaign to go live. So let's dive into it, shall we? With Devious Dungeons, Foreboding Forests, and the Coolest Cats. My name's Phil. Welcome to the Dark Orb and Kickstart your weekend. Hey, how are we doing? And welcome. If you're watching live, then I'd love to see your comments. If you enjoy the show, please hit like. And if you're not already subscribed, then please do so. It's going to be a great episode, I'm sure. And great to see those of you who are live already. I can see that there is a comment from Jay already, which has not shown up on comments because he was super early. Jay, great to see you, as always. Oh, I almost don't know where to start. These two projects are just so intriguing. Obviously, we have had a little bit of a head start, if you like, with The Walking Dead. Bear with me because I've forgotten to prepare one of my pages in the background here. The Walking Dead, we obviously had Matthias Jonsson Hawker, as I said in the intro, was on our show this time last week, in fact. And we spoke about the Walking Dead universe role playing game, which is a collaboration between Free League and AMC at quite some length. If you haven't seen that show, then please do check it out. Please let us know in the comments what you think of that, what we could do better, what you enjoyed about the interview. We tried to keep it really kind of light and fun. It's a Friday evening here in Europe at the time when we recorded it. And I don't know, I kind of like that conversational way of talking for interviews, maybe more than the kind of direct call and response um, that some interviews have, and you get different things out of it. I think by just having a chat. And Matthias has been on the show before, obviously, and is one of my very favourite people. Obviously, also, if you don't know, wrote Simbrum, which is my favourite role-playing game. So it's always a pleasure to have him and any other interviewees on the show. What are your thoughts on the Walking Dead universe? Let's talk a bit today about the campaign itself. There's quite a lot on there, and certainly if you go through all the comments, there's a lot of information about things like the mechanics that are in place. So it's based on various different role-playing games that Free League have produced in terms of the system itself. Obviously, you've got Year Zero, but it's not just pure Year Zero engine that they've used for the game. It's also pulled in from various different places. So you've got the safe havens from Mutant Year Zero itself. Then you have the stress mechanic from Alien, for example, as well, and you've got a kind of threat level which is kind of feels a little bit like Darkness from Coriolis. It's not identical, but there's certainly some kind of interplay, if you like, in the theming. Sanjiro Tokage, very good to see you as well. Thank you for joining. Yeah, shall we dive in and have a look at the Walking Dead universe Kickstarter campaign itself? As I said, we spoke at length about the kind of the development of the game, among other things, last week. So let's open up the campaign, and please do bear with me whilst I get the page loaded. Boom. Right. So let's get that size a little bit better as well. There we go. Okay, so how well is this doing? It's doing pretty well in terms of money. I mean, I'd love for it to get higher. It'd be amazing if we got the £1 million mark, and it's not impossible that it could get there. In terms of Swedish crowns, it's almost at 5 million Swedish crowns, which is phenomenal. Um, and yeah, Free League always produce amazing, beautiful games. So I'm really pleased with how far this has gotten so far. But hopefully we can get it further, right? What I am going to do as well, I don't think you need to see my name there, so let's just get rid of that from the screen. So it makes it easier. There we go. Right. So yeah, 5,000 backers. How cool is that? How cool is that? Just great. We can make it together, but we can only make it together. Glenn, if you don't know the show, The Walking Dead, we touched on this in the interview as well. I will just say it's not just some zombie show. The presumption is that Walking Dead's all about zombies, and it's all the story is just basically people who are trying to survive an oncoming zombie attack. It's not really what it's about. I'm sure that people will now just bang on about how they're not zombies, they're walkers. Well, that's true as well. The lexicon of the show very much dictates that they're called walkers, and you have various um, different aspects to them. But the show is actually about the interplay between people. And the walkers are a persistent environmental threat, and one has to take those into account, just like any other environmental threat. I mean, it's like bad weather. You know that it's there, and you can see when it's coming, and you have to deal with it. Yeah, Jay says crisps are the enemy. Anyone who's not in the UK, crisps, Walkers is a brand of potato chip or crisp in the UK. So, in fact, they're the same as Lay's in America. United States of, although our flavors are way better than yours, I've just got to say. And in fact, if you're watching live and you know what I'm talking about, please hit up in the comments and tell me your favorite flavor of Walker's crisps. Yeah, why not? Let's do it. But yeah, so these undead are a persistent environmental threat, but the larger threat is actually other people. It's all faction based, and the TV show is very much a faction based show. It's about the tribalism of human nature. Cheese and onion. They used to be my favorite. Not so much now. I'll see if anyone else answers, and I'll tell you what mine is if you really want to know. Yeah. So basically, that's the thing. The walkers are there. They're a persistent threat. You have to deal with them. If you make mistakes, then they become a larger threat. But this is really about groups of people and how they deal with the threat of other groups of people, and even dealing with the threat of changing dynamics within your own group. So it's something that's very relatable, I think, regardless of the other stuff that's going around, because people are like that. Let's go back here. Right. So I will say, first of all, that the campaign is beautifully written as far as I'm concerned. Obviously, Matthias has had a lot to do with that, and you can really tell that in the tone of the writing, and even the updates are written in a really fun and accessible but personable way. They're not that dry in terms of updates. And as you can see, there are 16 updates, and they're all worth reading, actually. It's not very often that I see a campaign where each of the updates really brings something, and the majority of them do. There's quite a lot of talk about the mechanics. So, for example, there's a stress mechanic in this game. We'll get to that, which comes from Alien. You also have a threat level mechanic, which is around the zombie horde and how much noise you're making, how much notice your actions are creating from the zombie horde that's just over there, around the corner. Let's scroll down and see. The Walking Dead has always been about characters facing impossible choices in an unforgiving world. In the Walking Dead universe role-playing game, you enter into the world of the dead and must face these choices head on. You can do this at any point in the timeline, encountering familiar faces and locations, or new ones, but the hardest choice will always be the same. Who are you going to be? We should do a shout out to the incredible liaison manager between brand manager between Free League and like the big names like Fox and AMC, etc. He's been doing amazing work for Free League. Excuse me for 1 second. Amazing work for Free League in getting those licenses shored up, and he really knows the material very well. So he's very good at safeguarding the intellectual property, and that's the most important thing, because that's how they will build trust with successful. From what I've seen, AMC are going to get involved in this game itself, and that's actually really interesting. So not only is this made, £500,000, hopefully it'll go on to make £1 million, but I suspect that AMC are going to start really pushing this. And there's some information about, there's some information around, I can't remember if it's on this campaign, which definitely alludes to that in terms of actual plays and things like that. So I know 3D aren't directly involved in that, but let's see if it's in here, and if not, I'll talk about it anyway when we get to the end of this page. So you have Joe LaFave, as I said, the person who's designed this. So if you like the game author to a large extent, it's Niels Hinser. Now, Niels has done some incredible work. Really has. He's been involved with Tales from the Loop, Versen, and if you've not read Versen, then you really must. And I'm sure he's done a few other things as well. And he's certainly with Free League, and you can really see even within the Free League catalog a progression from Tales from the Loop onwards. And what little I've read of the Walking Dead through the pages and the layouts and stuff, it's all incredible. Then you have, of course, Matthias, who's game director. He's like the project manager who's overseeing it all. Thomas Herenstam, also, as head honcho at Free League, is heavily involved in making sure that the quality is there. And then there's the art, and the art is by primarily not Martin Grip, even though one might have seen that. I think Martin's done the cover, but Gustav Ekelund. Now, Gustav's really an impressive artist, and you probably haven't really noticed his work in a good way, because he matches the style of Martin so very well that there are some pieces that are in, for example, Symbaroum and Coriolis, and even Twilight 2000, that one might presume are Martin Grip's work, and they're actually by Gustav. And I believe all of the interior art has been done by Gustav in this specific case. And it's phenomenal. And I think also Christian has done the layout for this. I could be wrong. Apologies if that's the case. You can check that video I had with Matthias. But the layout is stunning, and we'll look at that and you'll see. Jay says, Free League have a history of strong base building and internal struggles in their game, especially in Mutant Year Zero. Yeah, absolutely. I still haven't played Mutant Year Zero. I've got 3 of the 4 core books over there on the shelf of many things. And it's on the list. The closest I've gotten to it is we did have a game of it's kind of almost Mutant Hindenburg in terms of style, but it was actually the Swedish game Undergångens Lovtagare, which is like an older Mutant game, and that was amazing. And I'm hoping that we'll get back to that. The GM was phenomenal, and unfortunately we had to have a hiatus. This happens, right? But maybe that'll restart, and maybe we'll get that streamed. It was great. And yeah, base building and the struggles between factions. And even in Mutant, there's a lot of politics there. In fact, there's lots of contemporary politics that is kind of hidden, that's built into the narrative or even like the published scenarios and stuff. Highly recommend you try it out. Anyway, back to Walking Dead. So here's some of the layout, and is this not just incredible? Like, Free League books always look great, but I really genuinely feel that there's been a jump here in terms of layout. I'm not entirely sure why that is. Maybe it's just the integration of how the colors are pulled together. we've seen it kind of evolve over time, and like the last kind of few were things like the One Ring and Blade Runner, and they look stunning. And it just feels like every time that we see a new book, the layout gets better and better. The game itself, you play the part of individuals struggling to survive in the hostile and unforgiving world known from the TV series. Challenges you face are never trivial. They can appear from just about anywhere, from the lack of essential supplies, from conflicts brewing within the group, hidden construction flaws in your safe haven, or from approaching herds of walkers hungering for your flesh and blood. This is where it gets interesting. So, there are, in fact, 2 game modes, and this mirrors Alien, where you have in Alien, you have the campaign and you have cinematic. Here we've got campaign and survival. It's basically the same thing. And the idea is that if you're doing a campaign, then your GM has not got not necessarily got, and I don't think there is a published campaign for this at this time. I don't think that's planned. A full overarching story. It's actually more organic than that. It's intended to be more organic. So the players will say what they want to do, and then you'll work with the GM to create the story of your safe haven, where it is, and then the things that come out throughout emergent gameplay and emergent storytelling around how your dice rolls act, resolve, etc. Kind of tell the story of where you are and what's happening. So yes, you'll have a GM that's going to be planning things in order to keep things moving, but it's not necessarily designed in the way that we might expect from a grand campaign, such as the grand campaign stuff that you get in Coriolis or the One Ring or any of those really. It's much more about playing in the moment. Then you have survival mode, and survival mode is where I think all the published material is probably going to steer towards, at least in the first place. And that's more about, you're a group of survivors who are in a haven, and I don't know, zombies are scaling the walls, walkers are scaling the walls, and you have no food, and you've only got 2 ways out. Which way are you going to take? That kind of thing. And the starter set is a survival scenario, I believe, at least one, and comes with a bunch of pre-generated characters. Some of them are from the TV show, because this is affiliated towards the TV show, not the comic books and things. So officially, there's no kind of comic book tie-in. But from talking to Matthias, it seems that the pre-generated characters that are from the TV show are not necessarily intended to be what you're playing the published scenario that they're providing in the starter set with. They're more kind of just content to help you understand stats, and if you want them to show up, or if they're there as NPCs, for example. But we'll see what actually comes out. They say your goals and choices and the result of your efforts while struggling to survive create the storyline for campaign mode. Survival mode presents you with a predetermined and often acute problem. They put you right into a dramatic and dangerous situation that needs to be handled immediately. And survival mode scenarios often feature locations and characters from the TV series. 1 second. Right. Content warning. Walking Dead universe deals with dark and existential themes, and this role-playing game is no different. The stories told in this game can be violent and distressing, not a game for children. And that's a good thing. It's not a TV show for children either. Bruce says, surely survival mode is a search for toilet paper with secret objectives for PCs. And who's the hidden traitor? That's what I want to know. Oh, that's a different game, but yeah, sure. I mean, that's pretty much it, isn't it? It's the search for toilet paper and new socks. Because, you need socks in the world. What's great as well is that basically most of the book writing is complete. So once the campaign ends, and we've got how long now? Let's have a look to see. 11 days to go. So once we're completed in less than 2 weeks, Obviously, they'll wait for the funds to come in to validate who's actually paid and who hasn't. And then probably within a month or so from now, I'd a guess, we'll get the PDF, and that's going to be, yeah, it's a beta, but it's pretty much there. So they're classing it as complete core rulebook and starter set. I can imagine there might be some room for tweaking if they're like glaringly obvious issues, but pretty much there, which I think is really exciting. Okay, let's look at some layout again. So the player characters there is, again, yeah, another beautiful piece of art from Gustav there. The mechanics, year zero engine. So we have the, I believe the black dice here are your standard dice. They're the dice you roll when you're summing up your skills and your abilities, presuming that's what they're called, to create a dice pool. So if you've not played Year Zero Engine before, we create a dice pool from your, effectively your core stats, so how strong you are, for example, and your abilities, like how good you are at using that strength. So, for example, a melee would be an example of a strength attack or strength ability. So you'd have a number for melee, how good you are at actually fighting, and a number for strength, which is how strong you actually are. You sum those numbers together, and that will give you a total number, say 7. Pretty good. You then roll 7 d6 dice, and every 6 that you roll, so the highest number on the dice, on the die, every 6 is a success. Generally speaking, you need 1 success to achieve a task. And if you have multiple successes, you get to do extra things. So a bit like stunts, for example. You might want to make that attack. If you're having a fight, your attack is going to create critical damage. Or it might be that you managed to do something else. So yes, you managed to hit them, but you also managed to achieve some other goal at the same time. Or rather than taking a critical, because a critical is not just more damage, it actually provides some kind of lasting damage, usually. I'm thinking of Coriolis in particular here. Another role-playing game I've really... critical does something different from just more damage. So you could say, I don't want to buy a critical attack with my additional successes. Instead, I want to do more damage because I know that that guy is nearly dead, and a critical might kill them, and I don't really want to kill them. I just want to incapacitate them. That's how it is in Coriolis, if memory serves. It's been a while. So there are kind of ways that you can choose how you want to attack someone effectively, and what the narrative impact is of what you've done. So that's your normal dice. That's your, here in this case, it's your black dice. You also have the red dice, which are stress dice. Now in Alien, the stress dice are yellow, so these are red. Woohoo! It's a better color. And basically, you can take stress dice on if you want to re-roll, among other things, if memory serves correctly. So ultimately, yeah, here we go. So rolls can be pushed, but when you re-roll, you also take a stress die. So you add permanently one of those red dice to your pool of dice. That's great. It means you've got an additional chance of success. So I've rolled 7 dice. Somehow I've missed. I didn't get a single 6 on my dice roll. I really want to hit them. So I've gone to hit them. I've missed. I'm going to follow through with another punch. I'm going to take a stress die and add that to my pool. I'm now rolling 8 dice. And what you're hoping for is that that red die that you've rolled, bearing in mind that your pool of seven dice may already have had some stress dice in it. So you could actually already have 2. You could be now rolling 3 red dice. And if any of those roll a 1, then that's bad. So just to kind of demonstrate what we have on the dice, on the 1 is this black hand. It's intended to be the hand of a walker. And what that basically means is, no matter whether you succeeded as well, so you could get 5, then great, you succeeded. You wanted to do. You maybe even succeeded with a bunch of additional. But you've also, so if you were looking at this in Fate, for example, it might be the Powered by the Apocalypse. it might be considered similar to a partial success or a success with complications. So, yeah, but a walker head, and before you know it, they're charging to attack, for example. Or you bash the door and it goes down. The door itself was not the only thing that falls down. The roof behind the door and part of the wall also falls down, exposing the building to the rain from above. So yeah, basically you get the idea. It's a partial success and a partial failure. Great. So very, very simple. And the character sheet is nice. It looks like it's pretty well laid out. There's a lot of stuff on there. It does remind me of the Mutant Year Zero character sheets in some ways. Okay, let's talk about the actual campaign. So there are a few pledge levels, and let's start at the very top. So the digital edition is 300 Swedish crowns or £24 in British money. That'll get you the PDF. If you want the starter set, which comes with, let's see if we have here, a bunch of stuff, and most of the add-ons are things going to the starter set, and I wouldn't mind betting that most of those things were going to be in the starter set anyway. Free League are very clever. So, to an extent, I can't imagine that there's much at this point in the Kickstarter or add-ons in the Kickstarter that wasn't already going to be there, because they already had an idea of how successful this would be, and also they're working with AMC, so they've got some money kind of coming in from that direction, I would guess, as well. Or there'll be, something. Anyway, the starter set includes a full-length survival scenario, just the one by the look of things by default, but more will be unlocked. You get a threat counter, which is very similar to the counters that you see in the Savage Worlds basic accessory set. I can't think what it's called now. You get a bunch of dice. I think you get literally there's many 20 dice. A bunch of handouts of pre-gens, 2 books, so the rule book and the scenario, a couple of maps, and I think that map might get upgraded to cloth. I can't remember. We'll have a look in a second. And a pretty box to put it all in. So the starter set, which is £28, which is great value for a starter set as far as I'm concerned, bearing in mind that those dice sets are probably going to be probably about £10 each if you buy them on their own. So, in terms of buying it now versus buying it retail, if you only wanted the dice, it's probably still worthwhile getting the starter set because you get the map and all that other crap as well. It's great. It's a great value there. There will be shipping added onto that, of course. But that's just survival mode. And then we have the core rulebook, 40 quid, 500 crowns. The core rulebook and starter set bundle, which is probably where I'd recommend starting if you're really interested in this franchise, which is £63 or $800. $800? Gosh, 800 crowns. And then what the guys and girls in the chat would call the fill level, which is the deluxe bundle, which includes the deluxe edition of the rulebook, which is this one here. So the challenge with the deluxe edition is it might not be to your style. If you're a collector, I would recommend strongly considering it, because Free League don't tend to have their they don't tend to have any of the collector's edition stuff available anywhere else. So you might see a few at a convention. I remember a few years back I saw the Tales from the Loop collector's edition on one of the distributor stands, the Modiphius stand, in fact. But I think their model has changed since then. You might see a few at a convention if you're really lucky, particularly if you get to a convention right after the game has come out. But I wouldn't bet on it. They tend to just print enough to kind of deal with postal failures and damage in transit and that sort of stuff. But yeah, a quick run through of the stretch goals. Most of these, if not all of them, have been unlocked. So full color map, bonus archetypes, dice, 20 dice in the starter set, which is really great, actually. More pre-gens, more maps, the threat meter, pre-gen the solo mode, which is cool. So if you want to play this by yourself, because no one else in your household likes walkers and zombies and The Walking Dead and the undead and that sort of thing, then you can. But just make sure you lock everyone out, because otherwise you're probably going to scare yourself. Virtual tabletop Foundry. Interesting, it's Foundry, not Foundry and Roll20, but personally, I think that's probably not a bad shout. I'd like to see it on Roll as well, if I'm honest. More likely it'll end up on Nexus, which Free League have an agreement with. So I think Alien's on there, so it'll end up there, I'm sure. More pre-gens. This one's of another character from the TV show. Digital RPG art book, so basically a PDF with some pictures in it. I've got those pictures anyway. Another archetype and another pre-gen character. So, I mean, as you can see, most of that stuff is probably stuff that would have been in the starter set anyway. But don't let that dissuade you. That just means that they're not over-promising and likely to under-deliver. You've got add-ons as well. There's not a lot of detail here, but basically the add-ons will be, do you want more dice? Do you want like other books as well? So normally you can add on things like the core rule books of other games like Enveron or Tales from the Loop or whatnot as well. One Ring, etc. So that is, in a nutshell, I mean, there's a retailer pledge as well. We don't care about that. That in a nutshell is the Walking Dead universe. I'd love to know what you think about it, and if you backed it, what level you've backed it at. Obviously, it probably goes without saying that we also have a Discord, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on Discord. So please do consider joining us. If you're watching on YouTube or on Facebook, then the link for our Discord is down there. And obviously, we do have Patreon as well. So if you like what we're doing, then please consider supporting us. Crisps are the enemy. I do indeed agree. Bruce says he's at the fill level. Really? That makes two of us. I don't love the style of that book, to be honest with you. I can see why they've chosen the colours that way around with the black on the red. I guess being an old rocker, I'd prefer it if it was the other way around with red on the black. But then it wouldn't match the dice, and the dice are red with the black. And it does kind of make sense that the dice would be red for stress. So I can kind of see the path that they've taken. But yeah, I think probably what I'll end up doing is then at some point when there's a sale, picking up the standard edition of the core rulebook, which is what I'm going to do with Blade Runner. So I've got the limited edition version of the Blade Runner role-playing game book, which I obviously haven't opened. Don't be silly. And at some point when the prices drop at Black Friday or something, I'll pick up the standard edition. I think it's pretty cool. I'm really excited to see how the game turns out. I'm hoping that we'll get some time to play it on the channel. So we do have actual plays on Dark Orb, and hopefully this will be one of them. But we'll see how it goes. I don't know if it'll be a campaign or if it'll be the survival mode. We'll find out. We'll talk about it on Discord. So that is The Walking Dead universe role-playing game by Free League Publishing and AMC. Next game up, Maladum. So I will confess that I do not own Core Space by Battle Systems, and I've always felt kind of bad about that. Core Space is a tabletop miniatures game. Well, we should talk about Battle Systems first. So Battle Systems have been going for quite some time, and they make thick cardstock battle terrain. So think about the things you might have in your Malifaux or your Warhammer games even, or basically any miniatures role-playing or tabletop war game that's at the kind of 28 to 32 mil sort of scale. They've been doing this for a long time, and their sets are great because you can basically buy, for example, pretty much an entire pub, if this still exists on their website, in card stock. You punch it out like you would with the tokens on a board game, and all slots together. And before you know it, you've got a big building with floors and everything. You can lift things up and move them around. So You can have epic battles. You can use this for creating fun at your role-playing game table. Really great stuff. And of course, being that it's cardstock, it means it can be printed. So regardless of whether you're a painter or not, I think most people, well, not most people, but a lot of people in the hobby are more interested in painting their miniatures than painting their terrain. And even if you do want to paint terrain, to be honest with you, a lot of terrain, particularly before the advent of 3D printing, but even now, a lot of terrain, once you've got it and you've glued it together, assembled it, you've then got a great big box of bulk. And certainly if you're in the UK, we don't have big houses, right? In Sweden as well, I know, depends where you live. Certainly if you're in the middle of city somewhere, in central London, New York, wherever, you tend to have a small place where you live, and you only need half a dozen decent-sized pieces of scenery for a table, and suddenly you've lost a wall. That's where things like battle systems come in with their pre-printed, slot-together buildings. And in fact, I tell you what, I'm going to just throw together, get onto their website to show you some of this stuff in case you've never seen it. And it's really fun because with not a lot of effort and a bit of money, you can end up with some really great terrain, which you can use for all sorts of things. Let me see if I can find one of those things that I was talking about. So if I start here, so check this out. Here we go. But this is the sort of stuff that battle systems were renowned for a long time, like your fantasy villages, the tavern. I mean, look at this. And the price is hardly anything, 37, £38. Yeah, okay, it's cardboard, but it's exactly what you want for throwing something together and getting some excitement at the table. And not so long ago, a few years back, they went into doing science fiction, and they pulled together a product called Core Space, which kind of ties it all together. And what was interesting with Core Space is that basically it was a bunch of science fiction terrain, kind of looks like spacecraft kind of thing. So think a bit like if you know Space Hulk, kind of felt a little bit like that, with aliens and human miniatures and scenarios that you could play. So it was almost like a bit like Zombicide in terms of feel, if my understanding is correct. So it's all cooperative dungeon crawl in space with 3D terrain, and it was cool. And I never played it, and it's been on my to buy list and to play list for a really long time, and it just hasn't happened. At UK Games Expo, we were looking around, talking to people, and lo and behold, there on the table at UK Games Expo was some really pretty looking fantasy stuff. Like the layout was far more exciting than just a couple of buildings, and in fact, it more resembled this. So if I just make this window the right size again, more resembled this stuff you can probably see on the screen now, like a proper hall with stairs and minis and tables and furnaces and all sorts. Talking to them, turns out this was a new core space type of product, but instead of being science fiction, which I always struggle to get to the table, literally, it was fantasy. This was a year ago, almost 9 months ago, and here we are. We're here. So Maladum is actually two different projects together. There is one project which is the board game or tabletop dungeon crawler, which kind of looks like this. So you've got I think it's 2x2. In fact, it says it right on the screen here: 2 foot by 2 foot, 60 centimeters by 60 centimeters neoprene mat. Not even a cardboard board. It's a neoprene mat, which is way cool and kind of unusual in terms of the hobby generally, without it being an add-on. You get your plastic player boards, which is very zombie side. you get a bunch of amazing encounters and dice and tokens and rulers and stuff. And effectively, yeah, it's a dungeon crawl, and it feels from reading the blurb that it's a legacy game. So the things that you do in each mission actually have knock-on effects to future missions. But by the way, Mohammed, great to see you. Thank you very much for joining. Um, yeah, the results of each mission do feed into what you get further down the line. I think there's 21 scenarios, including the introductory scenario, which is replayable. At least out of the box, as standard, without any add-ons. That's how big the core box is, the core game. So that's one part of the product. The second part of the product is actually a terrain campaign, if you like. So there's a second box, which is just full of terrain. And look at this. Doesn't this just look incredible? I was trying to zoom in, but it's not going to let me do it. But I could probably, let's see if I can just copy that image address. Boom. There we go. Hopefully that's showing up a little bit better for you. And I just think this is phenomenal. So again, this is all cardboard. This I didn't say this before, but for both this and for the other thing that we just looked at, the core box, if you like, they pack flat into a normal board game box, which is just great. And you don't have to do any painting. Now, I love painting. I'm not very good at it, but I enjoy it. And I don't really enjoy terrain painting. More importantly, I don't have a lot of time. And the time that I do have, which is what I was alluding to earlier, I would rather spend on painting my heroes and my bad guys and my good guys, not painting walls and floors and that sort of stuff, tables and things. I've done a bit of that in my time, but it's not something that I tend to want to prioritize. So yeah, the fact that you basically have these two great big boxes of cool stuff. I'm just going to find that image for the actual board game as well. Let's do the same thing for this. I just think it's really, really smart. There we go. You can see that right there. And that's it. So you have a campaign game, you've got a extra scenery, and let's have a look at actually how much stuff you get, because it blows my mind, to be honest with you. There's so much of it. You get your rolly out thing. Oh yeah, there's this animated thing. Let me again, I'm going to copy the image address. Let's watch this in a little bit bigger. Isn't that smart? All this stuff that you just get in a box. Think of the stories that you can tell with that amount of scenery, and it doesn't need to be laid out that way. You can lay it out however you want to tell the story, to create a skirmish, for role playing, for a war game. It really doesn't matter. It's up to you. There are rules. There's like a preview rules and a narrative campaign thing as well. Take a look. I started reading it. There's a good 40 pages, so I didn't get very far through it. I didn't feel the need to, but what it reminded me of was, in some ways, it reminds me of what I was hoping to get out of Gloomhaven. Now, I've said this before. Gloomhaven is an amazing game that doesn't quite fit what I wanted. Loads of people I know absolutely adore it, but it's not a role-playing game. And I guess with my friends or maybe even people in stores at the time, it was kind of hinted more at being, yes, it's a Euro game, yes, it's a strategy game, but quite roleplay at heart. But really, it's just that story that makes it kind of roleplay. The actual function of the game is not that. This feels like a role-playing game in a box with cool terrain, and the way it's written reminds me of the campaign, and the way that they kind of built this arc kind of does feel like it's everything that I was hoping Gloomhaven would be and wasn't, and probably everything that I love about Folklore, The Affliction, which is a game that we adore, actually, in this house. On top of that, you have things like Sword and Sorcery, which is pretty much the same sort of thing with a slightly different flavor. It feels like more of the same. So if you like that kind of dungeon crawl, then it's definitely worthwhile. I guess also similar to Descent, but without that the mechanics of having one person driving the evil force or relying on an app. I think it's a little bit more structural than that, a little bit more kind of self-governing without needing all that technology. What else do we have? There's a video about how it works. Definitely worthwhile checking that out. Battle Systems have done a great job. I'll show you here. It's linked here. And the other thing is that there's been quite a lot of feedback backwards and forwards in the comments and in the updates. Definitely worth checking the updates out on this one as well, about how you've got all this extra terrain in this second box, not part of the Maladum core box, and the campaign stuff in the Maladum core box is really only intended for the terrain that's in that box. But there's a lot of people, and I would be one of these people, who would rather that if I bought both boxes, because that's one of the options to the pledge, is to buy one box or the other or both, then you kind of want the story to kind of fall over into all that extra stuff that you've got, right? I mean, you spent all this money on extra stuff, so you want to get to use it just without having to think twice about it. And so that's something that they're building on. They've got this idea of universal quests. Let's look at the rewards. Back up to here. So, hang on, there we go. Right. It's a sandbox game. You can play in whatever terrain you like. Hence, the combined pledge of both products enables you to do that. But here we go. So it's a solo co-op branching narrative campaign for Maladum itself. For 1 to 4 players, it takes 30 minutes to 120 minutes. Hands up if you think that doesn't include how much time it takes to set up the bloody terrain. I can imagine that's going to take you 30 minutes to an hour. I can imagine it will take me 30 minutes to an hour. And the terrain is included. £100, not cheap. I will tell you that core space hasn't really deviated far from that. It's probably a little bit cheaper than £100 now. In fact, let's have a look. Core space. You can get it for like 80 or £90 now. I've seen it as low as 75, but that's probably not in English. So if you wait, this price will go down. But if you're someone who cares about getting all of the stuff, the Kickstarter edition is different. And that's the thing, is that with Kickstarter, as you all probably know, it's those extra goodies that make it worthwhile. So let's have a look at what you actually get. So you get 7 adventurers, 7 character sheets, those flippables so you can use them as NPCs as well, 7 class boards. You get 8 Lamentors, 2 Hellfonts, 3 Myria, these are all bad guys, a Malagaunt and a Rot Troll. Revenant character board, a Malagaunt character board, so they're the character boards for your baddies, basically. 4 Cankers, a Dracon and Troglodyte, so more baddies. So that's the Maladum core set. And then the Vaults of Enveron Terrain, which comes with the core box as well. So that core game is in the vaults of this place, I guess. Then you get a bunch of components, a token pouch, which is leather-like. Apparently it looks like suede to me. Kind of a cotton suede or something. Adventurer dashboards. As I said, they remind me a lot of Zombicide. Dread trackers, pegs, dice, counters, books. This is where it gets interesting, and this is where getting a Kickstarter comes into its own. All of the bonus content unlocked just for Maladum, so this is just for that first core box. So you've got additional characters, a marksman, a guardian, additional creatures, split-tail rats, my apologies. Krieger, human contender, that looks to me like it's another playable character. So let's go through the playable characters. So Aria, the human marksman, a dweller guardian, a human contender, a human primorist, an eld rogue, and a human Eudaemon. Matt Damon. And then baddies so far unlocked. You've got split-tail rats. I thought I said Mary and Allery, a great bear, and then there's a whole lot of other stuff at the moment as well. So you've got bonus equipment, the class boards, more event cards, side quests, an upgrade on the token pouch from this cotton to like the leather effect. More quests. So these, I think, are the quests that you can use with the terrain or any terrain. Hidden locations decks and all that sort of stuff. Doors and trapdoors and stuff. Floor tiles and things. So just adds on to the feeling of it. That's all your add-ons that are many of which I should imagine are going to end up being Kickstarter exclusives that you get in the core box. Then you have the dungeon terrain. So this is slightly cheaper at £80, so it'll probably end up about 60 quid retail if you give it a couple of years. Loads of walls and ruined walls and doors, stairs, a rope bridge, another rope bridge, a grand entrance, archways. You can see it's loads of stuff. And then also the cardboard doll's house furniture, as we refer to it in this house. Machinery, thrones, tombs, chests, braziers, that sort of stuff. Accessories, another mat, so you can have, a 4x2 play area. Really, if you take all that terrain from one box and have it adjacent to your core box, you basically got a 4x2 playing area. Hang on, if you buy a double load, then you have 4x4. Load of clips to hold everything together. My apologies. So here we go. Here's the bonus content. So you have a cage, you've got walls, you've got a weapon rack, a strong room and an armory, dungeon walls again, barrels, a forge, a prison cell, treasure, bunks, a secret chamber, and we're just waiting for the storeroom to be unlocked. It's £175 as a combined pledge. You're not really saving a great deal compared to just buying one or buying the other. But of course, what you do get is you get those extra bits. So there's nothing extra, if you like, from buying the two together, other than that you will save like £3 or £4 compared to buying them individually, or the individual price on this campaign. But you get everything all in one go. Obviously, these are normally going to be handled in a pledge manager. So yeah, we're looking at 80 quid for the dungeon terrain, 100 quid for Maladum itself, £175 for the bundle. Yeah. So Mohammed, they're already printed in full color, and the quality is incredible. I saw this with my own eyes. I'll have a look and see if I took any photos. If I did, they'll be on my phone. So I'll see whether I took any photos of it, because I remember being absolutely blown away at the time. Yeah, it's one of those things that you kind of think, wow, I just can't wait for this to show up. And it's here now. And the delivery is January 2024, so we've got a bit of time, so you can get all those other things on your shelf painted. Those 10 unpainted minis that you've got, you can get those done in this time. I know I've only got at least, at most 5 miniatures unpainted. It's probably some kind of multiple of 10 after that 5, and it's probably double digits. I don't want to know. But yeah, I actually, I don't know about you. I'd love to hear your thoughts, but I think that Maladum is a really exciting project, and Core Space was beautiful, and I do have regret that we've never managed to get around to buying it. But I don't think it would have gotten to the table. I think in my household, I think Maladum is far more likely to get played, especially now that we've found the dining table, because having moved to where we are 9 months ago, and obviously, new studio and everything, things are beginning to get in order in this house. So things like actually playing board games might occur again. It's been a while. We haven't even got ISS Vanguard to the table yet, and that's been here for a while. Let me know what you think. Let me know in the comments. Also, I do have one question for you. I'd love to hear from you. What on Kickstarter right now are you very excited about? Things that are out now or out in the next few days? Please let me know in the comments, and I'll check them out. And if they look like something that I think that we're all going to enjoy, and if we haven't already got plans, I'll throw that on, and we'll talk about that either next week or the week after. My other question to you is, what are you currently reading? So if you're a role player and a GM, or even if you're a player, what are you reading? Are you reading any role-playing game books at the moment? The reason I ask is I've got my book here that I'm currently reading. Do not tell Matthias Johnson Hawker, he'll be very upset with me. But I am currently reading Trophy Dark, which I this has been a shame for a while. But yeah, I'm thinking that this would be a great game to get on as an actual play. I'm trying to get my head around it at the moment, particularly things like literally like moments. And there's some mechanisms in the rooted and trophy system that I just haven't quite got in my head yet. Have you got any games that you're playing or that you're planning to run where there's just one or two mechanisms which seem very simple, but you're just struggling to get your brain wrapped around them? Let me know your challenges in role playing and which one game that you've got in front of you right now is one that is there's something just eluding you that's knocking your confidence or making you think twice about whether you're quite ready to run it yet. Because that's where I'm at with Trophy, and I'm sure it's going to be great fun. I have run it before. I know I could do it better. So I just want to get it into my brain and then we'll see what happens. I think we're there. I think this has been yet another Kickstart Your Weekend. I hope you've had fun. I hope you've enjoyed the show. I know I have. Thank you so much for those of you who have taken part live. So to Jay, to Mohammed, and to Bruce, who have joined in the comments. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy evenings to join in. I'll be over on our Discord, and certainly we'll be chatting there for a little while about these projects and many other things. So if you're not a member, then come down to the Discord. The link is down below on most of the platforms that we're streaming on. And we'll be back either next week or the week after with more role-playing goodness. So until then, I hope you've had fun, and I hope that your dice rolls continue to be way better than mine. Thank you so much for joining. Take care of yourselves.